You're tuned in to Ask the Master Auto Technician. Car questions? Get answers right now. Call 850-763-0555.
James Auto Center, we fix it right, guaranteed. Beep, 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 yeah!
All right, good morning, everybody. This is James Morris. This is Thursday morning show. I have Rob Lapham calling all the way from St. Joe. He's calling all the way from St. Joe, and we're talking about security and privacy in America. And Rob, I know you used to sign your emails to the something about the NSA, the only branch of government that truly listens. Is that something you think is kind of a metaphor of what's happening in America? Our security has been lost.
That sig on my email is probably going to go back up after the election, but I've always liked it. It came from a Lou Rockwell website, and I've got it filed somewhere. Yeah, NSA is the only government agency that's listening. Yeah,
that really listens. The other ones just give you lip service. They really listen. That's good to know. But we do seem to, I mean, think about this. When I was growing up, when I was in high school, we used to make fun of the East German Stasi for spying on their citizens, with electronic devices and all that. And we used to say, man, that'll never happen in America. I can't believe this is happening. Why they let this happen? And here we are a few years later. Well, the same thing's going on.
It's pretty terrible. I think one of the contributing factors, at least recently, and frankly, it's a hype, but one of the, first of all, you've got 9/11, and then the knee-jerk reaction in Congress, promoted, frankly, by some in the administration who should be shot, but promoting the Patriot Act with all of the losses of freedom and challenges to our Fourth Amendment rights are buried in the Patriot Act. And then since 9/11, you've got these fairly isolated events, horrible events to be sure, but in Orlando and in San Bernardino. And so many people wring their hands at that and say, terrible. And some folks say, we need more, government authority and so on. Nonsense. First of all, the perception's all wrong. If you go back 700 or 800 years to when Genghis Khan and the Mongols kind of ruled the world, or at least a big chunk of the world, his mob killed an estimated 40 million people. And at the time, that was around 10% of the world's population.
Wow.
And the thing is, CNN and Fox News weren't there to bring the events, live into your living room. And so it happened. But I will bet you if you interviewed any sample of people today, probably fewer than 1 in 10 would be aware of how massive the destruction and the taking of life occurred in those days. They're just not aware of it. Yet they will wring their hands on Orlando and San Bernardino. It fails to recognize it fails to compare that type of activity with what ISIS does today, which is really just a drop in the bucket.
Well, you and I growing up, we always, give an example, we've always had examples of people, lone wolves, doing crazy things. Well, we had the Texas school where the guy gets up in the Tower of Texas back when I think it was 64 or 65. We forget about those. Even when I was growing up, we've always had people that do crazy things. But, and they're insane. They are insane. And by taking away the rights and liberties of more Americans to protect us from these crazy people, what it actually, in my opinion, does is it makes us less safe because, one, they want to make sure that you can't carry a weapon, so to speak. You have these gun-free zones, which just drive me crazy because that's where all the shootings take place, in gun-free zones. Same thing, I don't think San Bernardino was a case of that, but what happened down in Orlando, that was a gun-free zone. What happened at Sandy Hook, gun-free zone. What happens, all these places, gun-free zones. That's where the crazies go to shoot people.
Sure, and I don't know, I don't recall that San Bernardino wasn't a gun-free zone. I think that's a community college or community
it might have been. It might have even been a gun-free zone. I thought he went to a party and they did that at a party, neighbor's party. I don't know all the details. Only thing
but regardless, James, you and I can agree that if folks at that party or whatever the event was, if other folks had guns,
absolutely,
and had the opportunity to shoot back, then the numbers of folks killed would arguably have been far fewer.
Absolutely.
And those that speak to, let's get rid of the guns, let's regulate them, and so forth, they have precisely the wrong answer to the problem.
Yeah, when we were growing up, I remember in second and third grade, taking my Daisy BB gun and demonstrating the safeties on it, how you shoot it. And we used to have contests. Cub Scouts had contests in the 2nd and 3rd grade in the gymnasium with our BB guns. And then when we got to junior high school, we had 22. We shot 22 shorts in the gymnasium, and we had with our single-shot rifles. I mean, I still got the same single-shot rifle I used back then, a little Ithaca single-shot lever action. But the point being is, we grew up in a society where when people did crazy things like that, they didn't last very long because someone had a weapon in their car or whatever.
Yep.
Like Pearl River shooting. That's the only thing that stopped that. People forget about that. Pearl River shooting, a kid goes and starts shooting the school. The school principal goes to his car, gets his .45 long Colt pistol, and comes back and holds him for the police. If he hadn't had the pistol there in his car, more people would have died. So this is what I'm
James, I have a great idea.
Sure.
I think that we might, even though I hate new laws, we might have a new law.
What's the new law?
That says whenever you have a public event, you should prominently advertise whether or not it is a gun-free zone. And then if you advertise this event as a gun-free zone, then I would encourage the people who are in favor of gun-free zones to going to that event. And the rest of us are going to stay away from it because we don't want to be associated with it. And then over a period of time, those folks who favor gun-free zones will be eliminated by crazies.
Well, you know, I was we were at a thing the other day, and they were asking about the gun range. You know, was I for the Bay County opening the gun range? And I said, it's on record where I was against it because I don't like public money being spent for private things. You know,
Right.
I said, that's why I was against it. I said, but now, and looking back in hindsight, it's become a profitable adventure, and I think that's wonderful, but I want it to remain profitable, not a black hole. What were we going to say,
Well,
Henry?
the Florida Fish and Game actually run
Right.
the range. So it was a joint effort between Bay County
And the state.
and the state. So there's no private individuals involved as far as I know.
Well, there's no private, but the thing is, I like to see tax money spent wisely. I do. I have this problem.
Well, you know, in this case, I think this was an example of a wisely spent tax money. I don't believe we need to be buying parks and boat launches, but I think a shooting range is right up there. People need to be proficient,
Absolutely.
and they need to make sure that their children learn at an early age how to be proficient as well.
Well, we have a lot of people that think the gun range is up just strictly for recreational use, and that, you know, people only need to shoot for
Well,
recreation.
shooting is fun.
It is fun, but it's also one of the things that our Constitution talks about, that we should be able to defend ourselves against enemies, foreign and domestic, and that the local militia, which is the citizens of the United States, not the National Guard, which a lot of people have a hard time grasping, but it has nothing to do with the National Guard. It has to do with the citizens or the militia, and that we're there to defend the United States. And that's what the Libertarian Party feels about this, and we are constitutional conservatives, where a lot of people out there really don't know what libertarian means. Have you found that out, Rob, in your time, that a lot of people are kind of confused with the term libertarian? And then you tell them,
Tremendous amount of lack of information once you get outside our circle. I mean, we are too used to talking among ourselves as libertarians. We understand what the issues were. One of the questions that came up in the last week from the Tallahassee Democrat, which had those of us who are running for Congressional District 2 in for an editorial board interview. And one of the questions that came out on this general topic is, where do you stand with respect to open carry, and where do you stand with respect to campus carry? And this is all spinning off Second Amendment questions.
right?
And answers, and I don't know if the editors already knew what the answers were, or if they just weren't aware, but there are now 40 states, 40 of the 50 states have open carry.
Right.
We don't see in 40 states, or any number of states, people walking around normally with rifles slung over their backs, or packing a whatever it is, heat was strapped to their thigh and so forth. You just don't see that. So even with open carry, you cannot point to some degradation of society. But on the other hand, I would argue that there is likely less crime than there would be in these open carry states.
Absolutely.
And then the other thing is campus carry, and the questioner, in my view, was trying to make a case that as soon as you kind of cross the line of the Florida State University boundary, that maybe you shouldn't be allowed to have guns there. And you just cannot make a constitutional case for that.
No.
The Second Amendment does not say the right of the people to bear arms shall not be infringed, except on college campuses. It says shall not be infringed, period. And so the forces that would take guns away from the Orlando nightclub, or that are They're just not there because they are so-called gun-free zones. And universities. It just simply creates a danger. You mentioned the Texas event many years ago. These disasters just would not be as disastrous as they have been if other people had guns. You just can't get away from that fact.
Matter of fact, in Texas, if I'm not mistaken, the first responders were locals who went to their trucks to get rifles to fire to keep this guy pinned down. This is back in '64 or '65. If I'm not mistaken, the first responders were not police officers. They were local citizens who grabbed guns out of their truck to keep the fire down. I remember that now.
And James, you're right. And same thing just 2 weeks ago in a place called Cloud or St. Cloud, anyway, Minnesota, someplace near Minneapolis.
Yes.
And some nut goes, shooting up some beauty parlor or mall place, and just happened to be an off-duty police officer, but he was packing, and if he hadn't shot the other guy, then there would have been more deaths. No two ways about it.
Absolutely.
The cops didn't get there until 5 minutes later.
Absolutely. Evil prospers where good people do nothing, and I see that happening every day in our county, local, state, where people know what's right. They know what's wrong, but they refuse to do what's right. They do what's right for them politically or expediently, but that seems to be the problem out there. They don't do what's right for the majority of the people, only for the little special interest groups. Now, Anna Marie, what are you saying? I got Rob for Congress, Rob Lapham, robforcongress.org. I'm supposed to say that. Then we got Brian Armstead coming on here. But if people want to know more about you, we only got about a minute left. They can go to your website, Rob for Congress. That's spell out the word for. Congress.org, robforcongress.org, and you have 15 platforms on there about what you do if getting in office, what you want to see change. Am I correct about that, sir?
Absolutely. Every one of the 15 addresses one or more aspects of how we evolve to a smaller government and how we protect all of the rights of all the people all the time. And they're all addressed in those 15 pledges.
That is amazing out there. It seems like we have. Remember the book Animal Farm? They had the rules. They had the rules on the wall, on the barn wall out there. All animals are created equal. And then as time went on, we saw those rules change. All animals are created equal except pigs. And then I think then they changed it to all animals are created equal except some animals are more equal than others. And that seems to be the evolution of our society, where we have those that are in power and that are special and the elitists. They get to have special set of rules for them. And then we have us common folk, that the rules apply to us. So the rule of law is not equal across the board, and I think that's one of the reasons you and I are running. We want to see the rule of law equally applied to all citizens across the board.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
All right. Rob, thank you so much. I got Brian Armstead. He's calling all the way from Tennessee about a Habitat for Humanity bill that Nissan is doing, and we're going to learn more about that. We'll be right back. Bye-bye, everybody.
James Auto Center, we fix it right, guaranteed. Beep, 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 yeah.